The town of Cinderbrush lay smothered in late summer heat, its breath held tight like a secret not ready to be spoken. Dust clung to the wooden bones of storefronts, creaked under boots, and hovered in the stillness, as if even the wind dared not stir what it had seen. Folks said it was too hot for decency, too dry for mercy. That day, Mercy sat hidden, watching from shaded porches and behind lace curtains, while Cruelty took the stage at the heart of town. He stood atop a wagon bed, swaying slightly, the kind of man whose spine had once been straight but now bent with drink and shame. His name was Owen Morrow, a cattleman once, until bad luck and worse habits took his herd and left only 3 daughters he didn't know what to do with. They stood beside him, like possessions on display, each framed in the bleached light, with shoulders too square for girls so young. Their hands were folded, eyes fixed on the dirt, as if daring not to meet the gaze of the world. "She's strong," Owen barked, gesturing toward the eldest. "Can sew, cook, and don't talk back. 18 summers. Any takers?" The town square was silent, save for the buzz of flies and the low murmur of disapproval that coiled behind every shuttered window. No one moved. Even the horses tied outside the saloon seemed to stiffen. The girl, Delilah, didn't flinch. Her jaw was tight, brown hair pulled back in a frayed ribbon, and though sweat ran from her temples, her spine stood taller than her father's. Next to her, June 16 maybe kept her eyes down, a thumb tucked under her chin like she could disappear behind it. The youngest, Mercy, barely 14, blinked at the crowd, lips pressed in a tremble she was trying hard to still. Owen wiped his face with a dirty sleeve. "Ain't looking for much," he called, voice cracked from sun and whiskey. "Just enough for a train ticket. Maybe a drink." Whispers rippled like windless smoke. "He's gone mad, sellin' 'em like mules. God help those girls." But no one stepped forward. No one stopped him either. That's when the hooves came. Slow, measured, like the rhythm of a man who never rushed unless something was dying. A horse the color. If pewter came into view first, then the man upon its hull, long-shadowed, wrapped in the dust of the open prairie. Jedediah Boone hadn't been seen in town in weeks. Not since the last supply run and that quiet talk with the preacher about burying a year-old pair of boots that once belonged to his late wife. He was known by the silence he carried, and by the 3 sons who worked the land with him on the edge of the wilderness, boys, hardened by sorrow, men by necessity. He dismounted without a word, boots touching down like a hammer's fall. His gaze moved from the crowd to the wagon, slow and deliberate, and when it reached the girls, something flickered behind it. Recognition, maybe, or memory. Whatever it was, it stopped him in his tracks. Owen, half delirious, waved a hand. "You lookin'? Got 3 fine ones here. Useful, cheap." Jed didn't answer. The silence between them stretched taut. Delilah's eyes finally rose, met his. She didn't flinch. Neither did he. A moment passed. Then Jed reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a worn leather pouch. It jingled when it landed on the wagon floor. The crowd stirred. Heads leaned closer. "I'll take all 3, Jed said, voice quiet. "Sure." Owen blinked, staggered back a step. "All hell. I thought you'd just won." "I said 3. But what for?" Jed's eyes didn't flicker. Not for sale, for shelter, for something better than this. Owen opened his mouth, but the glint of coin kept him shut. He gathered the pouch like a child snatching candy, then leaped down, stumbling as he disappeared into the alley behind the saloon, swallowed by the stink of his own cowardice. No one moved to applaud. No one dared meet Jet's eye. The girls stood, frozen. He turned to them, not reaching out, not commanding, just waiting. Delilah spoke first, voice dry as salt. "What do you want us to do?" Jet's answer came slow. "Come with me, if you want to." Mercy clutched June's hand. Delilah's face softened, just a little. They stepped off the wagon. No one in town tried to stop them. Not the shopkeepers. Not the banker. Not the sheriff, who stood just inside his office and stared out with a jaw clenched tight around his pipe stem. The ride to Boone Ranch took hours. The wagon moved heavy under the weight of silence and the girl's questions, unspoken but loud in the air. Jed didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, only when a nod wouldn't do. He took them through land that stretched in quiet golden waves, hills that breathed slowly, as if nothing in the world had ever rushed here. Cattle dotted the pastures like commas in a long sentence. Wildflowers clung to the edges of the path, defiant in their bloom. When they arrived, the house rose out of the land like it belonged to their wide porch, cedar beams, a barn leaning a little but still standing proud. Jed stepped down, tied his horse. "Come inside." The girls followed, wary. Inside was warm, clean, bread on the table, a kettle steaming. Jed gestured toward the bench by the hearth. "I didn't bring you here to own you," he said. "I brought you because no one else would've." He paused. They watched him, unsure. "My sons are inside," he added. "They're good men, not perfect, not saints, but good. And they need more than dust and cattle." He nodded toward the hallway. 3 sets of boots echoed across wood. Then they came in. Eli first, broad-shouldered and hollow-eyed, with a scar that ran down one arm like lightning, struck in flesh. Silas next, limping slightly, face calm but unreadable. Then Cass, youngest, still boyish in posture, blinking fast like he wasn't sure whether to be afraid or hopeful. The girls didn't rise, didn't speak. Jed didn't press. "You'll have your own rooms," he said simply. "Your own say in what happens next." Delilah looked up. "And if we don't want them?" Jed nodded. "Then you don't take them. But you stay, if you want to. No one sends you away." A long pause. Fire crackled. Outside, a coyote howled into the vast blue night. Then Mercy, the smallest of them all, broke the silence. She whispered, "Do we eat tonight?" Cass blinked, then nodded. "There's pie." The girls didn't smile, not yet, but they stood. Delilah led her sisters to the table, slow and watchful, as if still waiting for the floor to vanish beneath them. Jed watched from the doorway. The last light of dusk cut across the wooden floor like a promise not yet spoken, and somewhere deep within the house, behind worn walls and tired beams, something old and broken shifted just slightly toward healing. Morning came soft to Boone Ranch, slipping through gauze-curtained windows like a hand reluctant to wake a sleeping child. The air was cooler now, kissed by the edge of September, though heat still lingered in the ground and in the bones of men, not yet ready to let go of summer. The 3 girls rose slowly from beds they were still not used to, in rooms that smelled of cedar and linen instead of sweat and ash. They moved through the house like ghosts, relearning flesh, touching doorknobs, brushing curtains, listening for something to fear and finding only silence. Breakfast came without command. Jed was already gone to tend cattle. The boys moved around the kitchen with the wordless rhythm of routine. Eli poured coffee for all 6 of them without asking who drank it. Silas cracked eggs, limping slightly, quiet even when the skillet hissed too loud. Cass brought in bread he'd risen himself, cheeks pink not from heat but from trying not to look directly at Mercy. When he set the plate down near her elbow, no one said grace, but everyone paused before eating, as if gratitude didn't need words to count. The girls ate in silence, but not the same silence as before. This one held curiosity, not fear, hunger, not despair. Later, they took to the chores like hands, remembering work. Delilah followed Eli to the barn, mucking stalls in her good shoes without a flinch. June found her way to Silas in the garden, where he handed her a trowel without instruction, and she knelt beside him, palms to soil. Mercy was left near the porch until Cass offered her a tin box of charcoal and a stack of blank papers, then sat beside her without speaking. She drew the sun, then a horse, then a little crooked house with a crooked fence and one tall tree with 3 swings. The town, of course, did not stay quiet. By the week's end, whispers traveled from the church pews to the general store and back again. They say he's marrying them off like stock to his sons. 3 girls, 3 boys, 2 neat by half. He always was strange. That Jed Boone talks to the wind more than people. The preacher's wife folded laundry tighter. The butcher's wife closed her windows. Children weren't allowed near the Boone fence line after school, but none of that reached the girls. They were too busy unlearning how to flinch. The shift was slow. One morning June hummed while drying dishes. Another night Delilah poured Eli an extra cup of coffee without waiting to be asked. Mercy began to laugh small, bright sounds that startled the men into stillness. Cass left a flower on her drawing paper once. He didn't say it was him, but Mercy looked at him across the table that night like she knew. The central conflict didn't explode so much as it crept. It arrived on a Thursday afternoon when the wind changed and the fields seemed to lean in, as if listening. A figure on horseback rode into the ranch yard, drunk on his own anger. Owen Morrow. He hadn't come for the girls out of love. He came because someone at the saloon told him Jed Boone paid Silverhand more than a man like him deserved. He stumbled from the saddle, shouting before his boots hit dirt. "I come for my daughters." Jed stepped out from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. His expression didn't change. "They're not yours," he said. "You bought 'em? I sheltered them. They're mine, ask them." Delilah had already appeared on the porch, her sisters behind her like birds who'd learned to stand in the open. She didn't look at her father. She looked at Jed, then stepped down and walked toward Owen. "I'm not yours," she said, her voice steady. "You gave that up when you sold me like a mule." June stood beside her. "You said you didn't want us. We heard it, every word." Mercy didn't say anything. She only reached for Cass's hand, and he took it without hesitation. Owen looked around, expecting backup from the sons, from the town, from anyone, but found only silence and sky. Eli crossed his arms. Silas moved to stand between Owen and the girls, his limp barely noticeable when his jaw was set. "You think you can keep em here forever?" Owen spat. "I'll go to the sheriff. I'll have this whole ranch burned." Down in whispers. Jed walked forward now, slow and deliberate, until he stood a breath away. "You left them," he said. "You lost them, and you don't get to come back just because you sobered up long enough to remember what shame feels like." Owen flinched not from the words, but from the calm in them. Then he turned, muttering curses, and mounted his horse without grace. He rode off. This time, the wind followed him like it meant to chase him clean out of the land. The girls didn't cry. They didn't ask what it meant. They already knew after that. Something settled into place. The next Sunday, Delilah sat beside Eli on the porch and handed him a letter she had written. He couldn't read too well, but she read it aloud for both of them. It was a poem about dust and hope, and how hard it is to be brave when the world forgets your name. He listened with his eyes closed, his hand resting near hers on the wooden railing. That evening, she kissed him, once, quiet, then went inside without waiting for a reply. June took to baking. She made cornbread with honey and handed a piece to Silas before saying anything. "You don't talk much," she said. "No," he replied, chewing slowly. "I don't either." He nodded. "Good." She smiled, then, not wide, but real, and Mercy, bless her, began teaching Cass to draw, badly. He sketched lopsided cattle, crooked barns, and once by accident what she swore looked like a man falling in love. Jed watched it all, from the porch. He said little, but every night he took out his wife's old shawl from the chest and hung it on the hook beside the door, where now 4 others hung, all different sizes and colors. The town did not understand, but it stopped speaking so loudly. Some said Boone had built himself a strange little kingdom. Others said he'd saved them. A few, quieter still, said maybe both were true. Time passed. The fence was mended, the barn repaired. A swing appeared from the tall tree in the yard, then another, and another, until all three sisters had one dot and one evening. Just as the sun burned low and gold over the fields, Mercy turned to Jed and asked softly, "Do you believe things can change for good?" Jed took a long breath, looked out over the land that had once taken everything from him. "I believe in seeds," he said. "You plant 'em, right? Give 'em care. They grow how they're meant to. Might take a while, might weather some storms, but they grow." Mercy nodded. Her hand tightened around Cass's. June leaned against Silas's shoulder. Delilah rested her head on Eli's arm. There was no ceremony, no papers signed, but something had been claimed, not possession, not debt, just belonging. And if the world didn't understand that, it didn't matter. The Boone Ranch wasn't built for the world. It was built for the ones the world forgot. And from its wide porch, as dusk fell slow across the plains, a voice seemed to whisper, not aloud, but in the heart of every soul who'd ever been discarded, "Kindness is the one fire that never burns out. And love, the quiet kind, the enduring kind, doesn't need permission to bloom. It only needs room."